David, please don't make this harder than it already is. I was behind the door when she said it. Again, same tone, same fake tremble, same overly rehearsed sigh at the end. You're a good man, but we've drifted. This is what's best for both of us. She paused. I heard her swallow. I imagined her looking in the mirror, doing that sympathetic head tilt, the one she used when telling waiters she'd unfortunately have to send this back. Then she said it a third time. David, please don't make this harder. That's when I dropped my keys. They clattered onto the hardwood like a pipe bomb. Silence. No footsteps. No, hey, honey, you're home early. She just froze behind the door like a raccoon caught raiding the fridge at 2 a.m. I pushed the door open. She was still standing there in front of the mirror, her mouth partially open, caught between lines. One hand on her hip, the other holding a crumpled napkin like it was a damn Oscar trophy. Our dog's bed was gone. Her suitcase was zipped and staged near the hallway. There was no card, no note, just her, standing in a monologue, and me, standing in a trap. Who the hell is Wyatt? I asked. She blinked. What? You said Wyatt last time. That's when the color drained from her face. She opened her mouth, closed it, and did that thing liars do when they're about to pretend you're the problem. That wide-eyed victim look. Why are you spying on me? I laughed. Out loud. It was the ugliest sound I've ever made. Because 5 seconds earlier, I was a husband bringing home Thai food with sticky rice, thinking maybe we'd finally sit down and watch that documentary about mushrooms she always talked about. Now I was standing next to her packed luggage, her speech rehearsal still hanging in the air like the smell of burnt toast. I should have yelled. I should have demanded answers, tossed plates, threatened lawyers. Instead, I said, "You're really gonna do it after the potluck, huh?" And that really caught her off guard. Her face twitched. What do you mean, what potluck? I pointed to the stupid flyer on the fridge with the dumb little smiley face drawn in pink Sharpie. You circled it, I said. Twice. She didn't deny it. She just grabbed her phone, turned away, and muttered, I'm not doing this right now. But I was. I did it. 3 hours later, I found a lawyer who didn't mind filing at night. 4 days later, I walked into her office potluck with a lemon tart in one hand and a manila envelope in the other. If you think that was petty, buckle up. You don't know the half of it yet. She didn't come home that night. That's the part that still makes my stomach twist. Not the speech, not the suitcase, not the fake tears I caught her practicing, but the silence. No texts, no calls, no fake excuse about staying at a friend's. Just silence. Like I was already erased, and she'd just forgotten to take out the trash that was still breathing. I sat alone in the kitchen, the lemon tart still in its plastic container. The scent of soy sauce clung to the air from the food I brought home, now stone cold. Her speech still played on loop in my head, like a cursed voicemail I never deleted. You're a good man, David, but we've drifted. No, Lydia, you drifted. And now you've run aground somewhere you think I'm too weak to follow. By midnight, I'd printed the divorce petition. I even formatted it with a neat little cover sheet. Call it presentation. You don't come for a man's peace and expect him not to answer with paperwork. The next morning, I got to work sealing the envelope with a satisfaction I hadn't felt in years. It was strange. I hadn't realized how long it had been since I'd done something purely for myself. No compromise. No pretending. Just a clean decision, sealed with a little golden sticker I found in the kitchen drawer. One of those dumb smiley face ones she used to put on grocery lists. Fitting, really. I wasn't just going to hand her the papers. No, that would have been too forgettable. She'd spent weeks scripting her exit, choreographing it for emotional impact. The potluck was her planned final act, the stage she built to play the victim in front of her coworkers. The girl who tried, but just had to leave the poor guy who didn't get her. I wasn't going to let her have that spotlight. So I made a call. Her office didn't have security. It was a boutique marketing firm. One of those modern ones with kombucha on tap and dogs running around in bow ties. I knew the potluck would be in the rooftop garden. She'd invited me last year. Said her coworkers loved meeting the man behind the lunch deliveries. That man, me, was now delivering something a little different. I dressed neat. Not flashy. Business casual with just a touch of, I'm not doing this to win you back. The envelope went in a soft leather folio. The tart went in a cardboard box, tied with red ribbon. When I got to the building, I wasn't nervous. I was electrified. Like the moment before you push over a domino and just know everything's about to fall. The elevator dinged open on the rooftop, and there she was, laughing, holding a plastic wine glass, surrounded by 3 people in overpriced blazers who clearly thought she was clever and effortless and fun. The kind of woman who could say, "He just didn't understand me," and they'd nod like she was reciting Maya Angelou. She didn't see me at first. I placed the tart on the buffet table, right between a spinach dip and a crock-pot labeled Janet's Famous Mac. I opened the folio, took out the envelope, and gently slid it under her plate. A place setting made just for her. Then I left. I didn't say a word. Didn't look back. The moment I stepped into the elevator, I finally exhaled, like I'd been underwater for years, and someone had finally broken the surface for me. Back at home, I waited. Not like a desperate ex. More like a man waiting for thunder after lightning. At 4:52 p.m., my phone lit up. "Lydia." "What the hell?" "Oh, Lydia. You haven't even opened it yet." She didn't text again. Instead, I heard tires screech outside the house. I glanced out the window, and there she was, heels in one hand, phone in the other, storming up the driveway like she was auditioning for a courtroom drama she hadn't been cast in yet. Her sunglasses were still on, though the sun had started dipping below the trees. A move, I assumed, meant to hide the shock still twitching behind her eyes. I opened the door before she had a chance to knock. "You think that was funny?" she snapped, waving the crumpled envelope like it was radioactive. "You ambush me? In front of my coworkers? What the hell is wrong with you, Harris?" She was louder than I expected. Not embarrassed. Not apologetic. Furious. She wasn't ashamed I had served her. She was ashamed I got there first. I crossed my arms and leaned against the doorway. "Funny? No. I thought it was efficient. You always liked efficiency." "You've lost your damn mind," she said, stepping inside like it was still her house. Like I hadn't shattered the script she spent weeks rehearsing. Her perfume hit me in waves. Sharp. Artificial. Just like the speech. She spun around in the living room. "You really thought you'd win points doing this in front of everyone? At my job?" I laughed, and for the first time in months, it didn't feel bitter. "You were going to dump me after the potluck, Lydia. Don't act like I ruined something sacred. You were going to make me into your little poor me story over deviled eggs and fake smiles." She froze. And I mean really froze. The kind of stillness that only happens when someone realizes their hand has been exposed and they forgot to bluff. "How long have you known?" she asked quietly. "Long enough to see the dog bed gone before you ever said a word." She looked down. That was her tell. Lydia always looked down when she knew I was right. But her silence wasn't guilt. It was calculation. That's the thing about her. She never truly reacted. She adjusted. She was always preparing for her next line, her next story, her next version of herself that the people around her would accept without asking questions. And I ruined that version. "I wasn't going to humiliate you," she muttered, her voice finally cracking. "I wanted it to be clean. Simple. I didn't want to make a scene." I scoffed. "You practiced a monologue in the mirror, Lydia. That wasn't clean. That was choreography." That's when she snapped. "You are weak, Harris. You're always looking for some big dramatic gesture to make you feel like a man. You don't confront things like an adult. You hide until you explode and make everything worse. Like serving divorce papers after being rehearsed out of my own marriage." Her eyes flared. "You didn't have to make it public. You embarrassed me." "No," I said, stepping forward. "You embarrassed yourself. I just took the mic before you could lie with it." She went silent again. For a minute, neither of us moved. The tension felt like it had weight, like it was hanging from the ceiling fan. This was it. The end of the movie. The last scene. But unlike her script, mine didn't have a neat, poetic finish. "You should leave," I said, not yelling, not whispering, just stating a fact. "Take your suitcase. Take whatever version of yourself you like best today. But we're done, Lydia. You don't get to rewrite this one." She didn't cry. She didn't plead. She just walked past me and out the door, keys jangling, rage pulsing behind her every step. But I knew her. She wasn't done. This wasn't about love anymore. It was about control. And people like Lydia don't like losing it. It didn't take long. 3 days after the potluck incident, a little beige envelope appeared in my mailbox. No return address, just my name typed on the front like I was being served an invitation to my own funeral. Inside, a letter from Lydia's lawyer, dated and smug. She was pursuing a countersuit for emotional damages related to public defamation and undue embarrassment in a workplace setting. That's how she worded it. Undue embarrassment. As if handing her divorce papers in front of Karen from HR was the emotional equivalent of shoving her into traffic. She was mad because I got there first. That's all this was. A strategic tantrum in legal form. Still, I did what I always do. I played it safe. I scanned the letter, forwarded it to my attorney, and then poured myself 2 fingers of bourbon I hadn't touched since New Year's. I sat on the couch and stared at the living room, empty now. Her throw blankets gone. The passive-aggressive, inspirational quotes no longer hanging on the walls. All that remained was the quiet. A different kind of loneliness. One that didn't ache, it burned. And I think that's why I did it. I went upstairs to the office, logged into our shared cloud storage, and searched her name. She was meticulous about deleting things. Lydia always liked a clean history. But what she forgot was that the sync folder had a recovery log. And what she really forgot was that she once saved her phone backups to the drive back when she cracked her screen and needed everything transferred over. What I found wasn't just messages. It was strategy. Dozens of voice notes. Some to her sister, some to a friend named Erica, others that she clearly recorded for herself. Notes she never intended anyone else to hear. And that's where the real Lydia lived. The one I'd never been introduced to. The one who called me the backburner husband and the safety net. The one who mocked the way I cried when I watched those rescue dog commercials. The one who, in one particularly gut-punching voice memo, said, "I swear, if Harris doesn't find someone new within a year, I'll feel like I emotionally handicapped the guy." She laughed after she said it. I didn't. But it wasn't just the cruelty that stunned me. It was the calculation. In one clip, she detailed a timeline. First the potluck speech. Then a few weeks of civil post-separation boundaries. Then introducing her real partner to her circle, someone named Wyatt, who, according to her, had been waiting in the wings for months. She even joked that she hoped I wouldn't Google his name too soon because his last startup tanked and the reviews are brutal. That's when my blood ran cold. She didn't just blindside me. She was laying down bricks for a whole new life while I was still trying to fix our roof. I copied everything. Every file. Every voice memo. Every timestamp. I didn't plan to use it. Not yet. But I needed to have it. Because Lydia wasn't just coming for a clean break. She was building a story. One where she was the evolved woman breaking free from a sad, stunted man. The wounded wife. The brave escapee from a loveless marriage. But what happens when the villain she wrote doesn't follow the script? That night, just before bed, I received an email. No subject line. No message body. Just a photo attachment. It was a shot of Wyatt and Lydia, not kissing, not hugging, but standing outside my house. Smiling. Broad daylight. 2 days ago. The timestamp confirmed it. They'd been here. Together. I didn't hear them. I didn't see them. But someone did. The photo had been taken from across the street, from my neighbor's window. And whoever sent it wanted me to know I was being watched. The first time I showed the photo to someone else, I didn't even speak. I just handed it to Mason, my neighbor across the street, ex-Marine, now a retired HVAC guy who mostly tinkers with old radios and never misses the recycling pickup. He looked at it, squinted, then said exactly what I expected him to. I didn't take this. We were sitting in lawn chairs outside his garage. He had 2 beers open before I even crossed the street. I trusted Mason because he never asked questions. He didn't care about Lydia, never liked her, and once told me, after a few drinks, that she had the eyes of someone who smiles too quickly. At the time, I thought it was just his way of saying she was fake. But now it felt like prophecy. I turned the photo back around. Wyatt and Lydia, just off my front porch, her hand barely grazing his wrist, both of them mid-laugh, as if the ruins they left behind were just a story to share at brunch. "You're saying this wasn't you?" I asked. Mason shook his head. "Not from my house. I've got screens. That angle? That's from next door." Next door. The Suttons' house. Except the Suttons were gone. Moved to Arizona 6 weeks ago. The place was still technically on the market, but empty. No cars. No lights. No furniture. So how the hell was someone inside? That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my living room with every light off, watching through the blinds like a man possessed. Every creak felt like breath on my neck. Every passing headlight turned my veins to ice. I kept hearing her voice from the recordings, replaying it in my head like a twisted lullaby. "He's weak. He'll fold." And I started wondering, what if she wanted me to find the files? What if the forgotten backups weren't forgotten at all? What if the photo, anonymous, perfectly framed, dropped into my inbox at midnight, was part of something larger? I mean, what kind of person rehearses a breakup speech for days and still keeps her old phone backups in a shared cloud? Someone who wants control. Someone who builds traps, not escapes. At 2:14 a.m., I heard it. A door. Not mine. Across the street. I got up, crept to the window, and there it was, a flicker of light behind the curtains of the Sutton house. Just one room. Just for a second. And then darkness again. I didn't call the cops. I should have, maybe, but I didn't. Instead, I got dressed, grabbed a flashlight, and crossed the street in bare feet like a lunatic on a mission. The front door was locked, but I knew the back gate was loose. Mason told me the latch had snapped during a storm last month. I slipped through, heart pounding, flashlight off, adrenaline doing things to my hands I didn't know were possible. I reached the rear patio, slid the glass door gently. It moved. Unlocked. I stepped inside. The smell hit me first. Stale carpet, old paint, dust. But beneath it, something else. Cheap perfume. Familiar. The same one Lydia wore on our second anniversary. The one I bought her in that little store in Charleston. The one she said was too old lady-ish a year later and never wore again. I knew then. She'd been here. Recently. I stepped deeper into the darkness, scanning each room slowly. Everything was bare. Floors hollow. Walls stripped. But in the living room, on a folding chair that didn't belong, was a printed folder. My name on the tab. Just 3 words written on the front in Sharpie. In case he digs. I didn't open it. Not then. I grabbed it, left the house, locked the back door behind me, and walked home without ever turning on the flashlight. I don't know why. Maybe I thought if I kept the dark around me, it wouldn't follow me inside. Back in my kitchen, I placed the folder on the table like it was a bomb. I made coffee. I waited for the sun. Because whatever was in that folder, I knew it wasn't made to protect me. It was designed to break me. I didn't touch the folder for hours. It sat on the kitchen table like a predator that had gone still, but not asleep. Patient, knowing, dangerous. I walked past it 5 times. I made toast. I refilled my coffee twice. I watered the plants Lydia left behind, even though they were already dying. I don't know why. Maybe I was delaying the inevitable. Maybe I wanted just one more moment of before I read something I couldn't unlearn. But eventually, the silence in the house felt louder than my heartbeat, and I sat down. I flipped it open. At first, it made no sense. There were pages of old receipts, printouts of emails, a medical bill from 2019 that I had already paid off, a calendar with 3 months highlighted in red, all from the year before we got married. She'd annotated them in tiny handwriting. February equals the first lie, April equals fake Seattle trip, July equals he never confessed. Then came the photos. Me, younger, scruffier, in a hoodie I barely remembered owning, standing outside an apartment I hadn't lived in since college. One picture had me handing something, maybe cash, to someone whose face was blurred with a smear of marker. Another showed me sitting in my car, head in my hands, like I was mourning something I couldn't explain. And another, God. Another was me and Erica. Erica, the girl before Lydia. The name I hadn't said aloud in 5 years. We only dated for 6 months. She ghosted me after a stupid fight about money. I never chased her. I figured I'd embarrassed myself enough already. I buried her in the past. One of those, I was a mess back then, chapters that no one ever really wants to reread. But Lydia had been reading, studying, obsessing. The folder wasn't a threat. It was an autopsy of who I was before her. Notes scrawled in the margins of everything. Psychological profiling like she was writing a dissertation. Pattern: seeks guilt to feel needed. Does not confront until cornered. Emotionally docile until triggered. Erica equals trust fracture. Never addressed. Unresolved equals manipulable. It kept going. Pages and pages. She'd even highlighted sections of old social media posts. Things I wrote when I was 25 and angry at the world. Comments I made about heartbreak, about failure, about not being the kind of man anyone sticks around for. Lydia had tracked my insecurities, graphed my emotional history, and used it as a damn blueprint for how to break me cleanly. This wasn't some jealous ex-girlfriend revenge plot. This was architectural. By the time I reached the final page, my hands were shaking. There was a single sentence, centered in the middle of the last sheet. If he finds this, it means he's finally paying attention. No signature. No flourish. Just that. And the thing is, she was right. I hadn't paid attention. Not really. I missed the way her tone changed when she stopped asking me to come to office events. I dismissed the way she kept saying things like, "You always mean well," instead of "I love you." I ignored the shift from laughter to politeness, from partnership to performance. I thought she was stressed. I thought I just had to wait it out. I believed in her, even when she stopped believing in me. But now I realized the woman I married had spent years learning how to dismantle me without ever getting her hands dirty. And maybe the worst part wasn't what she wrote. It's that I still wanted to ask her why. Why go this far? Why invest this much effort into destroying someone who would have handed you the world just for a real hug at the end of the day? But I wouldn't get an answer, because later that night, I received another email. No subject, no message body, just an audio file. I clicked it, and what I heard was Lydia's voice, not angry, not sweet, calm, cold, surgical. He's going to figure it out soon. If he pushes, give him something small. If he digs deeper, we go to phase 2. I paused the recording. Phase 2. What the hell was phase 2? I hit play again. Let him believe he's winning. Let him feel brave. That's when he's easiest to destroy. I closed my laptop and stared out the window into the dark. The Sutton house was quiet again. The blinds still half open. No light. No movement. But now I didn't feel like I was being watched. I felt like I was being studied. Like a lab rat. And the experiment wasn't over. I didn't sleep that night. Or the one after that. My body was in the house, but my mind had taken up residence somewhere between dread and obsession. I started tracking my own behaviors like she had. What time I woke up, how long I stared at the same wall, what I reached for first, the coffee, the folder, or the whiskey I hadn't touched in 5 years. I thought if I got ahead of her process, maybe I could reverse it. But Lydia didn't build puzzles, she built labyrinths. The phrase phase 2 wouldn't leave my head. It infected everything. I stopped answering calls. I disconnected Alexa. I unpaired the Bluetooth in my car. I opened every closet, flipped every drawer, scanned every inch of my phone for spyware apps I didn't remember installing. You'd think I was being paranoid. I thought I was too, until I found something that changed the game. I went looking through the attic. There was a box up there I hadn't opened since we moved in. I assumed it was my old computer monitor or a bunch of books I never finished. But when I pulled off the lid, it wasn't mine. It was hers. A small black notebook sat on top of a folded blazer I'd never seen before. The notebook had no title, no labels, no frills. Just a tight elastic band keeping it shut, like it had been sealed for a reason. Inside was a manifesto. I can't think of a better word for it. It was handwritten, not printed, in Lydia's looping, almost girlish handwriting. But the content was surgical, brutal, chilling. She had named the notebook Foundations, as if this were the basis for something greater. And it started not with our marriage, or even with me, but with Erica. The X page after page, she dissected that failed relationship like a detective working a cold case. She had somehow tracked down Erica's college blog, found old Facebook comments, screenshotted posts where Erica once referenced a guy who didn't know how to fight for what mattered. Lydia had annotated it all. He believes he's the broken one. That's the leverage. Key weakness. Needs validation disguised as rescue. Repeat the abandonment rhythm. Then switch. But the most disturbing entry came halfway through the book, in darker ink, with one phrase underlined twice. There's no such thing as emotional murder if the victim signs the weapon. That line shook me more than anything else. Because I understood what she meant. If I fell apart on my own, then no one could trace it back to her. If I crumbled in silence, isolated, paranoid, blaming myself for everything, then she didn't have to be the villain. She could be the survivor. The woman who tried everything. Phase 2 wasn't just about destroying my name. It was about deconstructing my identity. She wanted me to implode. Quietly. In the background. So when she emerged with her clean narrative and shiny new boyfriend, no one would question it. I'd be the hollow man she had no choice but to leave. People would say things like he was always kind of unstable, and honestly, I think she saved herself. And I started to wonder, was that already happening? I hadn't spoken to anyone in over a week. Not Mason. Not my family. I hadn't replied to the lawyer's latest email. I'd missed 3 work calls and told my manager I needed personal time. I wasn't unraveling. I was disappearing. exactly as she'd designed. And the worst part? There was a part of me, buried, whispering, ashamed, that still wanted her to walk through the front door and say it was all a test. That she loved me. That the files and recordings and notes were some twisted cry for help. That this was all just trauma playing dress-up as strategy. But Lydia didn't make mistakes. Lydia planned years in advance. Which is why, when I finally looked back at the folder she left in the Sutton house, I noticed something I hadn't before. A business card. No name. No company. Just a phone number written on the back in tiny, red ink. The area code wasn't local. I stared at it for hours. Dialed once. Hung up before it rang. Dialed again. This time, a voice answered on the first ring. A woman. She said 2 words. Is he broken? I didn't reply. I couldn't. My hand went numb. My throat dried out. I realized, in that single moment, that Lydia wasn't working alone. And phase 2? Phase 2 had already started. I didn't answer her question. Is he broken? I just sat there, holding the phone, letting the silence stretch like a rope between us. And when she finally hung up, not angry, not rushed, just done, I knew something important had happened. They thought I would chase answers. That I'd spiral trying to find out who she was, what phase 2 really meant, whether Lydia had joined some self-help cult for emotional manipulators or was running a social experiment using me as her lab rat. They thought curiosity would be my leash. They were wrong. That call didn't break me. It woke me up. Because in that moment, I realized the power was never in the folder, the photo, or even the plan. It was in my reaction to it. And up until now, I'd been reacting exactly how they wanted, spiraling in my own head, isolating, watching myself fade out of my own story like I was just a placeholder. But I wasn't a placeholder. I was the protagonist. So I stopped reacting. I started moving. First, I called Mason and told him everything. All of it. He didn't flinch. Just said, "You need witnesses." Then he helped me install cameras around the house. Real ones this time. Not the dummy Amazon ones I'd put up during lockdown and forgot to charge. We logged everything. Time-stamped everything. Then I called my lawyer. I told him about the envelope, the stalking, the psychological warfare. I sent the audio files, the photo, the scribbled notes from Lydia's twisted little notebook. He didn't say much, just, "This isn't a divorce anymore. This is a war of documentation." Next, I went nuclear, emotionally. I reached out to people I hadn't spoken to in years. Friends I ghosted when Lydia said they drained me. My parents, who I let drift after she called them emotionally manipulative. Even Erica. Yes, that Erica, who responded with more grace than I deserved. She told me she always thought Lydia was a bit theatrical, but she never imagined this. And finally, I stopped hiding. I posted my own truth. Not a sob story, not a revenge post. Just a raw, honest account of what had happened. I didn't name names. I didn't smear her. I just laid out the facts, how gaslighting works, how long-term manipulation rewires your sense of reality, how someone can erase you while still smiling at your friends. And the response? Thousands of comments. People who had been there, who saw themselves in it, who told me they wished they'd spoken up earlier. Some were men. Many were women. All of them understood something Lydia never did. You don't erase people by quietly dismantling them. You make them louder. She didn't reach out again. No cryptic emails. No mysterious voicemails. No envelopes with riddles inside. Instead, I heard from her lawyer. She dropped the countersuit. The official reason was emotional fatigue. I like to think it was something else. I think she saw I'd stopped playing. I think she realized that the man who once cried quietly in the kitchen, trying to apologize for not being enough, had finally stopped apologizing for existing. 6 months later, the divorce was finalized. I kept the house. She kept the silence. And me? I started building again. Not from scratch. From memory. The old version of me, the one she mapped out in her notes, he's not gone. He still lives here. But he's not scared anymore. He's not frozen behind doors or afraid of being called weak. He's just aware now. Aware that strength doesn't always look like shouting or slamming things. Sometimes, strength is in walking away without burning the building down. Sometimes, it's in choosing to rebuild before someone else chooses to bury you. Today, I sat in my backyard with a book in my hand and a sun I hadn't felt in months warming my face. Mason waved from across the street. A dog barked. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was surviving. I felt like I was living again. And no matter what Lydia planned, she never saw that coming.